Hey guys, Pastor Ben here with another review and reflection. Today I want to review a wonderful resource that's been out for quite a few years now. This was published in the mid-19th century. It's called Expository Thoughts on the Gospels. I'm specifically going to be reviewing the Expository Thoughts on the Gospel of Matthew, and this is written by the great evangelical Calvinist Anglican Bishop of Liverpool, J.C. Ryle. So before I tell you a little bit about this work, let me just say a word quickly about why I'm doing this. I have been preaching through at my church the Gospel of Matthew for about 2.5 years now, and we are coming to the end of the series. And as I've been preaching through the Gospel of Matthew, of course, I've been benefiting from a range of different commentaries and exegetical and homiletical works that have been profitable for me. And so I'm going to be reviewing a few of the ones that I leaned on most heavily. So a lot of works, you might end up drawing on for this sermon or that sermon, but I didn't necessarily work through all of every commentary that I was citing, of course. But there are certain resources that I found particularly helpful that I did pretty much read through the entire thing as I was going through the Gospel of Matthew. And so for those that I feel like I have read all of or most of and could actually give a review, I'll be doing some reviews on. So I'm going to be doing probably a number of Matthew commentary or Matthew resource reviews coming out. Maybe I'll pull those together in a playlist, so if there's anyone who's either studying or teaching or preaching through the Gospel of Matthew, they could sort of see some of the things that I worked through and my thoughts on them. But I wanted to start with this resource by J.C. Ryle because it was a go-to for me. Very, very helpful, very, very useful, and something that I think would be helpful for a preacher like myself who was working through the book, but also just for anyone who wants to kind of read through it or do their personal devotions or perhaps family worship in the Gospel of Matthew. So let me share a little bit about what Ryle is doing in the book and what I see as some of the strengths and weaknesses being. So first off, a bit about the history of this set. So I have, this is a republished edition put out by Baker, reprinted in 2007. It's obviously, like I said, a work that's been out for a long time. I think Ryle started publishing these expository thoughts in the 1840s. I'm going off memory here, so I could be wrong. But mid 19th century, J.C. Ryle, who was, as I said, an evangelical Calvinistic Church of England minister who eventually became the Bishop of Liverpool, he wrote out these expository thoughts through each of the four Gospels. And so it's been republished a number of different ways. There's this Baker set that's 4 volumes, red volumes like this. Banner of Truth has come out with, I think, 7 volumes republished. Those are very nice because they're retypeset and very cleaned up and all of that. These are kind of the scanned, lithograph pages, so not quite as ideal, and there are some typos and things, but still well worth having. And you can maybe even find these online. They may be in the public domain now as well. So you can get this in a number of different places. But what Ryle was wanting to do was to provide commentary on all 4 of the Gospels. Now, when he did Matthew, Mark, and Luke, so that will include what I'm going to be talking about today, what he's giving is very much expository thoughts. It's not a commentary per se. In fact, when you open up the preface that Ryle wrote, here's what he says. In sending forth the first volume of a new expository work upon the Gospels, I feel it necessary, in order to prevent misapprehension, to offer some explanation of the character and design of the work. The expository thoughts, he says, which are now before the reader, are not a learned critical commentary. I do not profess to expound every verse of the Gospels, grapple with every difficulty, attempt the solution of every hard text, and examine every disputed reading or translation. So right at the beginning, he wants you to know, hey, what you have in your hands is not necessarily a verse-by-verse commentary per se. Now, when he did the Gospel of John, he actually did kind of do more of a learned critical commentary. There's a lot more notes. He spends more time in discussion. So the Gospel of John, he gives more of a commentary on. In the red set that I have, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are the first 2 volumes, and then the Gospel of John is the last 2 volumes. So that kind of tells you how he came at that. That was the last of the Gospels that he commented on. But as he's commenting on the Synoptic Gospels, he's doing so not from the perspective of a critical commentary that you would kind of work through writing an exegetical paper, but really something that's to give you expository thoughts. So it's trying to help you understand what each passage is talking about. It kind of breaks it up into very digestible sections or pericopes. He kind of gives you some commentary on that, but he'll often draw out, 2 or 3 kind of lessons. And so it's very devotional, very pastoral. If you are preaching through it, where you will find the most help is not in sort of untangling the exegesis or the meaning of the text, but more saying, okay, if I know what this means, how do I apply this? How do I preach this? How do I bring this to my people? And he does a wonderful job of drawing that out. So people in my congregation who were sitting under the Matthew series heard me quote from J.C. Ryle a lot because he does a great job of saying, okay, here's how this text applies. Here's what it means for people. And he does it in a really wonderful way. If you've read J.C. Ryle before, he's one of my favorite authors because he has real substance, but he's very clear and he's very compelling and he's very pithy and strong as a communicator, like a C.S. Lewis or a Thomas Watson or something like that. Just really doing a good job of putting things succinctly and well. He was a contemporary of Charles Spurgeon, so you can get some similar vibes as what you would get from Spurgeon's writing. Just a very good writer, very good communicator, and very much has a pastor's heart and wants to communicate pastorally what these texts mean and why they are important. So that's the strength of this book. So if you are looking for something just to help guide you through the Gospel of Matthew and your devotions, or we have used these volumes in the past, I think we did the Gospel of Mark as a family, because what he'll do is he'll give you a section and he'll give you the text there, the King James Version of the text, and then he'll have about 3 pages on each section. So you can read through it out loud in 10 or 15 minutes. It's not long. And that's a real strength. It's a short, digestible, but substantive kind of comments and thoughts all the way through the Gospels. And again, the Gospel of Matthew in particular. Because it is not a learned commentary, there are times where you'll have questions that Ryle just doesn't take up. So you've got to brace yourself for that. Also, because he's not really fleshing out why he's coming to his conclusions, sometimes you'll come to a different view than he does. So, for example, when he was going through the Olivet Discourse, Ryle was a premillennialist. I'm an amillennialist. So, for those of you who know the theological lingo, different ways of interpreting text like the Olivet Discourse about Jesus' second coming. So, I didn't hold to all of his interpretations there, but he's trying to draw out again the practical meaning, the practical implications, the experiential, as our Puritan fathers would have said, kind of significance of these different passages. And so that's where it's strong. If you want to get a verse-by-verse critical commentary, there are other resources that I would recommend, and I'll probably do some videos on those here in the next few weeks or month or so. But this is really good if you're just wanting a kind of guide through it, or if you are preaching it, once you've wrestled with the text, to sort of say, okay, what are some ways that this could apply or some meanings it could have? Now, I think the strength of it is also sometimes its weakness, because at times I think he will draw out applications that are totally true applications. They're biblical applications. I don't know that they're always what that particular text is drawing out. So, he'll have a lot of applications about family worship and Sabbath keeping and things that sometimes the text is very much pointing us towards. Other times, probably not. And so that's always a danger. You don't want to read into the text or take the text as an opportunity to sort of jump onto your hobby horse. And we can all be guilty of that. I know that if someone analyzed my preaching or teaching, they would probably see examples of that. So I'm not faulting Ryle. I'm just saying he wrestles with that like all of us too. And you will see examples of that from time to time in these expository thoughts. But overall, he does a really good job of just giving us something brief, but it's very practical. And you will walk away feeling like you understand the text better, you understand how it applies to you better, and you understand Christ and the gospel better. And that's the goal, right? When we read any passage of scripture, right? Those are the 3 things I ask myself before I step into the pulpit each Sunday. I look at my outline, my notes, and I say, okay, is this going to help people understand the text better, understand their lives better and how the gospel applies, and see Christ more clearly? And if I can say, yes, I think so to each of those, then I'm ready to step into the pulpit. And I think Ryle does a good job of helping us to do that with the Gospel of Matthew and the other Gospels that he covers. So I would highly recommend you get a copy of Expository Thoughts on the Gospels by J.C. Ryle.